Alright, time to stretch another piece of 140-pound watercolor paper. This time, instead of putting it on a drawing board, I'm going to go with a cheaper option for my backing, which is some craft foam board. And I just picked this up at a craft store. You can find them at almost any craft store. The one thing with this is it's lighter, so it's easier to move it around. It's less expensive than buying a drawing board, but you can only use it once, maybe twice, and then it's going to just have had too much water on it and it's going to break down and you're not going to be able to use it for very long. So I'm going to stretch this picture, this watercolor paper, the same way. I'm going to start with my foam brush, and I'm going to actually move my foam board out of the way because I don't want it to get too wet. And I'm going to get my watercolor paper flipped around, get some water on my brush, and paint the back just like I did with my other watercolor paper that I did earlier. Evenly soak the back. Put that brush to the side. Take my dry brush, pull off any extra paper so it's not too soaked. I'm going to move this up here, get a little bit of my toilet paper to just dry off some water off the table. And then I'm going to put my foam board down and flip my picture around. Center it on my foam board. You want to make sure that when you cut your foam board down, because these come in very large sheets, I cut mine down so it's about a little over an inch wider than my picture is. That way I'll have plenty of room to add tape. I'm going to get the paper wet on this side as evenly as I can. Trying not to get too much water on my foam board. There we go. That looks and feels pretty even. There's just a little bit too much water here, so I'm going to dab that up. And then I'm going to go over it with the foam brush. Kind of flatten it out and make sure there's not too much water in one spot. And then I'm going to dab off some water where it touches the foam board. Where the foam board just got a little bit too wet, I mean. Then I'm going to take my tape and do the same thing I did with the other watercolor paper. Just get strips of tape. And I'm going to start with this. I got a little too much tape, tear some off. Put it on this side, overlapping about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch over my paper. I'll get this side. Now you might be wondering why I'm not just taping this down to my table, why I'm using boards. And the reason I'm doing that is because when you're doing a watercolor, sometimes you want to be able to lift up your board and tilt your watercolor a certain direction so that it will make your color and water run a certain way and give you a different look. So it just gives you a little bit more freedom when you're doing your actual painting. And it also is a little bit easier if you're doing more than one project. It won't take over your table while you're waiting for a layer to dry. You can always move it out of the way and then put another board with another picture up if you will need to work on more than one project at a time. So let's get the last piece of tape on this. Air underneath. I want it to be as smooth as I can get it. And there you go. You also want to make sure you use painter's tape or that gum tape I told you about and not use masking tape. You can if it's the only thing you have, but it's more likely to tear your paper when you take it off. Painter's tape and artist's tape will be able to peel off a little better without tearing your watercolor paper. Now I want to again leave this somewhere to dry where it's lying flat, and that way the water won't run down to the bottom if I have it on its end. And that looks like it's ready to go. So this should be dry probably in 12 to 24 hours, depending on how hot or humid you are, how hot or humid it is where you are. And so this one's done. Let's move on to the one on cardboard backing. This is the final product for my watercolor paper on my foam board. Also no wrinkles in it, and it's looking pretty good. And my next video I will be showing you 3 different kinds of watercolor paints that you can use and how they compare to each other. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed learning how to stretch watercolor paper, and that way you'll be able to join me for other videos and learn other painting techniques and other art techniques. I'm planning on doing more than just painting. I hope you enjoyed this video.